Hello everyone, Superman here, coming to you with another DCUO video. Now this DCUO video is going to be a video that I have been getting requests for. I had two requests as of lately for this video, and it's going to basically just be a quick overview of all of my Earth Tank builds, and their updated versions. So this is basically going to be a video from my last few that I had, or mainly the last two of basically my all Earth Tank builds renewed video and my 2025 Battle Tank Earth Tank video. So it's just gonna basically kind of have those two involved. But this is just gonna be for more of a present day thing with all the new content and all the new moves and abilities and skills that are out. So it's just gonna give you a quick rundown of everything. But to start off the first build, it's going to be my basic fun build. This is my all around fun. Like, I'm not running any content. I'm not doing anything too crazy. And if I decide to do open world content, this is a build that you can use. It will be like if I wanted to go to open world Frozen Mogo, I can use this build as an option. But this build basically consists of, or this is a inspired by build, to put it simply, of the NPCs current loadout from Legends PvP. So I'm gonna go over the loadout first. My first move for this build is Gemstone Shield. My second one is Flight's Low Pressure Pull. The third one is going to be Localized Tremor. And then you have Swoop Attack, Freezing Breath, and Heat Vision. So the first loadout is basically going to consist of the shields, low pressure as a pull, the localized tremor, swooping attack, frost breath, heat vision, the basics. Um, my second one is going to be Earth's Shards build. Sorry, Earth's Shards skill, and then Sandblast, which is another Earth skill, and then Epicenter, which is another pull that is also an Earth ability. And then I have the Sunstone Dust Blast iconic ability. But since I am in tank role, it is going to be a shield group breakout, and it grants you a shield. Additionally, provides immunity to control effects and removes control debuffs for you and group members. And then I have Flight's Whirlwind Attack and then the Magma Vortex ability. But and for tank roll, it's another pull, and it's giving you a Magma Armor, which is a defense 10% and a healing multiplier, and it summons a swirling magma to damage and pull enemies in a radius around you before leaving a circle of lingering magma on the floor that roots and further damages enemies trapped inside. Upon reaching you, the magma heals you and bolsters your defenses. So, to kind of give you a rundown of this second loadout, you have shards here, then you have sandblast, then you have epicenter, and then you have the whirlwind attack, then you have the magma pull. Now, mind you, I don't have enough supercharge for the Sunstone Dust Iconic ability, so you won't see that and what it does, but I do have a video on that, going over it in the capsule video. So if you do know about the Absolute Superman or Absolute Kryptonian Time Capsule, I do explain the iconic ability there when I do get the ability itself. But to kind of add why I have Localized Tremor is because Shards adds a crushing effect that basically makes the enemies vulnerable to crushing effects. But the more I use Epicenter and everything like that, it will end up having a working in progress. Now to kind of go over the artifacts, because as you can see, my eyes are glowing, and then you just saw the red and blue proc of a lantern ability. But the artifacts I go into is Distilled Refractor. Now, Distilled Refractor is basically hitting an enemy with a pull grants you and up to 7 group members heals equal to a certain percentage of your dominance, and this effect is whatever percentage, and it's more effective on tank rolls itself. So it is a pull. So to put it simply, if I were to go with this or Epicenter or Localized Tremor, I will be healing not just myself but group members as well. Um, with that, and that does activate every single time you hit a pull. Now, my second ability is the Omega Totality. Now, I only personally use this for that red eye glow, so I don't really use this as a skill. But if I were to explain what the ability does or what the artifact does, at a certain level, it gives you the Omega Beams ability, and you get to use Omega Beams. And the higher you have the Omega Beams, oops, I actually should get out of combat. That would actually help, so I can show y'all. But to kind of go over the Omega Beams, I'm sure everybody knows what the Omega Beams already do, but you can single target the Omega Beams, or if you build up the Omega Beams to the golden status. So if I'm going to use my loadout here for a little while, you just kind of spam it a little bit, see if I can get to the crushing effect. Now, as you can see with Omega Beams, it does go and glow up to a gold, and that basically turns it into an AoE to where it damages enemies, or not just one enemy, but multiple. Now, I don't have it maxed yet, but it does hit multiple enemies and targets multiple enemies once you get it to the gold status. But that's basically why I have that on. It's only for like an iconic thing, so you don't gotta worry about it too much, but it's optional. The second artifact, or third artifact, sorry, is the Red Tornado artifact. And in tank role, its taking damage gives you the following for 10 seconds. It grants you 25% might and 12.5% precision. Damaging enemies heals you for the 15% of the damage done. And upon taking damage equal to 225% dominance and plus 285% restoration, pulses out a redistribution tornado, dealing damage equal to 70% dominance plus 70% restoration to all nearby enemies. And when in a party with another player in tank role, it'll apply the redistribution to them, transferring 15% of their incoming damage to you. So if you're in a raid or an alert with two tanks and one tank is like failing, if you switch to tank role and you have red tornado on, you will get some of that damage that's coming from him to keep him alive. So just keep that in mind with that artifact. So if you're ever having the artifact on and you're in a group and your character is getting damaged while they're fighting ads, it's because of Red Tornado. So just be mindful of that. Um, the fourth artifact that I like to use for this build is Omega Hedron, and using a superpower in combat while between 25% and 75% power increases your base power regeneration by whatever percentage for 6 seconds. Using a superpower will grant you bonus might and precision based on your current power for 6 seconds. So this one's basically just a simple power regeneration artifact because Earth is a very power hungry based power. Out of all the Earth tanks in game, Earth is the most power hungry. If I'm going to be completely honest, that's the one drawback of Earth that I don't like personally, which I hope will get fixed, but we do have ways around it in a sense of it making not as power hungry. But just keep that in mind with Earth is it's a very power hungry tank, including with Rage. Um, but on to the next artifact, which is a pretty new artifact. It's a pretty recent one. It's the Razor's Power Battery artifact, and it gives you an equilibrium. So it's basically while in combat, periodically unleash a mixture of red and blue lantern energy, damaging enemies and healing group members. Now you have a few different options when it comes to this. You have Razor's Rage, damaging and target lowers the cooldown of Equilibrium by 10 seconds. This effects only occur once every 5 seconds. All self damage is taken is reduced, so you will get a self damage depending from what I've noticed. But Razor's Simility is healing any target lowers the cooldown of Equilibrium, and then targets above 80% health deals bonus damage to that, and then targets below 80% health are healing again or healed again from that. So this artifact is one of those things to kind of put it into simple terms or sum it up. The more damage you put out, the more heals you'll get and damaging the other person. So just keep that in mind. Like say if I were to be in a PvP duel or if I'm fighting PVE a boss or anything like that, and you see the boss glow with like a red lantern icon and he takes mad damage, it's because I put out enough damage to sit here and damage him to where it made the artifact go off. And then if you see a blue one around me and a few other group members, or if you're in my group as well, the blue lantern one is basically going to heal you. So just keep that in mind as well with the Razor artifact. The more damage that's put out, the more chances of you getting healed, and the more your opponent is going to get damaged, whether it be PvE or PvP. So just keep that in mind with that artifact. It's kind of one of those artifacts to where you'll see what I'm talking about when you go through it and when you have the artifact and level it up a little bit more. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much this build. Now on to my DPS build. Now a lot of people with Earth, they tend to go for break tanking and break tanking alone for Earth. Now you can DPS as an Earth, and I recommend you DPS as an Earth as well because it's um it's easy for both parties, or at least for you, to have a DPS end as well as a tanking end, just in case like if somebody's tanking already and you go into an alert or raid, you can have that DPS option as well. Um, but going for the DPS, the loadout is it's pretty much the same as my first one. It's not going to be too different from the first loadout. First loadout again, it's the shields, low pressure. I have localized tremor, swoop attack, pulse breath, heat vision. Then I have epicenter. Then I have unstoppable, and then the sand blast. But then I have the beacon of hope ability, which I'll kind of get into in a second. And then I have omega beams, and then I do have the sunstone dust iconic ability again. For this build, I try to keep my builds in a sense to where I like, since I'm an iconic, I like to try to keep them iconicized a little bit, so I keep a little bit of iconic in it, but then it'll still do what it has to do for a regular DPS build. But to get into it, I have the first loadout obviously being the same. I have Unstoppable for a supercharge generator to build enough supercharge to use the Sunstone Dust Blast ability, because the Sunstone Dust Blast ability in damage roll, it's a damage tick, and the enemies damaged by the explosions takes damage or takes additional damage over time. So it'll proc, and the people that are around will start taking AoE damage or damage over time, to put it simply. Then once you pop it off, like they'll take the initial damage of the blast and damage over time with that. So that's why I kind of have this to build that. Um, but to get into the artifacts, I do have again Omega Totality. I have Candle of Neuron because Candle of Neuron is an artifact that I like for crits, to put it simply. You have the Demonic Pack. You have critical ability hits grants you a soul stack to maximum of 20 stacks, and then it increases your critical ability chance attack, or attack chance, to put it simply. Sorry, but you can contract consumes accumulated soul stacks, damaging up to 8 targets and increasing ability critical attack damage. But sorry, I'm like losing thought. Then you have Bad Deal. When casting Soul Signature, there is a chance of nullifying Devil's Deal for 12 seconds. When Devil's Deal is nullified, Neuron takes his cut, dealing 5% of the max health to the user. So this artifact does tend to damage you as well, but in DPS role, that's very rare. I really don't see it damaging me as much or as too often as you would think. Um, so that's that artifact. So this one's basically more or less just for your critical attacks and critical ability attacks. Um, And then again, I have Omega Hedron, which is basically a power regen build that grants might and precision based on current power. Then I have Razor going over that one again for the damage output of the Red Lantern part of it. And then I have Tetrahedron of Urgrund. And basically what that is hitting an enemy with a superpower grants you and up to 7 group members might equal to whatever percentage of your health. This effect is doubled in damage roll or controller roll. So this one's just a simple um, might builder. So anytime you use a superpower ability or anything like that, you will get might based off of that as well. So it's just literally a might builder. Um, and that's pretty much this build. Now, obviously, if you want to go over these things, because I know a lot of people like it, for my DPS, I have all might. I have all the red ones, and then I have the white lantern and blue lantern abilities here as well, which I will kind of go over as in these builds, but it'll be in other builds. So we'll actually get to that. And I do, if you don't know what these are and how to get them, I do have videos on them. Definitely check those out um, to kind of give you the rundown of everything and what they do. But that's that. And then for this build, to go over my augments here, I have 2 dominating here, 2 might, and then 2 resto to keep a little bit of restoration, the magma vortex, to kind of even that restoration out a little bit. Um, so there's that as a little side note. Now, getting into my full tank build. I actually have to leave around here. I didn't realize I was still in combat. Getting into the full tank build. Now, my full tank, what I mean by full tank, and I'm going to specify this for the people who are new to earth tanking, or really new to any form of tanking, because there's so many different variants of a build that you can make for tanking and all other roles. I want to kind of give you that rundown. What I mean by full tank is basically a full dominance set tank. So you'll see why my augments, they're all purple. That's basically specifying a full tank in a sense of build and the traits and loadouts of that, which I will get into for all the builds as well. But the loadout consistent for this build is going to be Gemstone Shield, the Weapon Buff, Brick Golem, Sunstone Dust Blast, Fortified Golem, and the Memorizing Lasso. And then the second one is going to be the Life Shell, which is the White Lantern ability. You have the Hard Light Shield, and then you have Beacon of Hope and Surging Barrier, which is the Blue Lantern ability, with Luminous Beam, which is a White Lantern ability, and Magma Vortex. Now, going through these loadouts, the rotation that you would want, you would obviously pop Brick out, use the Fortified Golem for a shield. You would pop a shield, weapon buff, and then consistent lasso pull. This is how I would usually run this build. I do a consistent lasso pull until I need to switch to this build, or switch to this loadout, and pop Beacon of Hope, Luminous Beam for single target pull, Magma Vortex for an AoE pull for ads, and I'll just kind of siphon through the whole thing. And then if I need Life Shell, I'll pop Life Shell Shield just in case after the hard light one. So it's pretty much an easy rotation when it comes down to this build. It's pretty simplistic. It's not too hard. And I will, don't worry, I know you're probably asking these questions like what are the specs and everything like that for the build. Don't worry, I will get to that at the end of the video to kind of give you a rundown of how they're spec'd and what they are. So don't worry about that. This is just basically going over the loadout and artifacts right now for the builds, but don't worry, I will be going through allies and specs and stuff like that after I go through all the loadouts and everything. But for the next build, this is my battle tank build, and what I mean by battle tank, it's basically a tank build that has a consistency of, you can have these two being dominants, purple, and then you can have all four red, you can have all four being green. For me, I have a mix of red and green, basically for might and restoration. You're not going into a full dominance build. So this build is basically going to be one of those builds to where you're looking for more damage output as a tank, to put it simply. Um, or in other terms, you're a tank, but you're trying to be a DPS, to put it simply, as another term of usage for battle tanking. Um, Now the loadout for this one, and I'm actually going to go over the artifacts. I forgot about the artifacts for the last one. My apologies here. Oop, go back here. Okay, so the artifacts for my full tank builds consist of the Mystic Symbol of the Seven, which is basically user granting them basically protection of the seven. The power of the symbol embolden the users, granting them the following bonuses. When hit by an enemy, increases defense by 5% for each enemy within 5 yards, maximum 20%. Increase healing received by 10%. Regenerate a small amount of health based on the restoration each time you are struck by an enemy. Then I have Clarion, which is why I have the weapon buff, because using the power of Clarion, executing weapon attacks heals up to 4 nearby players with the lowest health for 7%, or whatever percentage you have it at. For priority heal, this effect is temporarily empowered when activating your weapon buff for or of a priority heal. And then when you are empowered by the weapon buff, targets above 95% health, healed by restorative melody, receive a shield for 12 seconds. This shield's effectiveness is increased by whatever percentage. Players can only benefit from this once using every 30 seconds. Then you have Orion's Might. When you are empowered by weapon buff, weapon attacks deal 40% of your restoration and 12% of your precision as damage to all enemies near the targeted foe for 6 seconds. So if I pop my weapon buff and I go like this shield here will heal and buff, to put it simply. So whenever you see somebody having this shield and the whole group gets this shield, it's basically the Clarion artifact, and they use the weapon buff, and it's basically gonna do what it said, what's stated. Um, so that's those first two. Then I have Distill Refractor again. Hitting an enemy with a pull grants you heals and dominance. Manacles of the Force. This one is a solid artifact for tanking because it's capable of blunting the strongest attacks. These manacles put you in an unshakable state for whatever seconds, and attack damages you for at least 30% of your health, absorbs 50% of the incoming damage, and repels it over the next 3 to 5 seconds. And then the cooldown is 60 to 45 seconds. And then when Unshakable triggers, the following ability cooldowns are reset. You have Density, Gemstone Shield, Immolation, Redirected Range, and Winter Ward. So basically, all the shields you will have a cooldown reset when you get to a certain rank for this. Then I have Lasso of Truth, which is why I'm using the Memorizing Lasso iconic ability, because Memorizing Lasso iconic ability no longer pulls targets towards you. Instead, it tethers and hard taunts tank roll your targets to you. So, like I was showing when I was using it, I was pulling them, and instead of it being something that basically just have them like a taunt, it turns them towards me and they start walking. This one's a legitimate like pull them towards me. But tethered non-boss targets will be stunned and dragged towards you for 5 seconds. Additionally, Lasso of Truth will consistently seek out up to 2 to 7 additional non-boss targets, drag them towards you. Tethered targets, while tethered to an enemy, heal for 1% of all it receives. Now, mind you, when you do use the Memorizing Lasso artifact, it turns it into an AoE. So it used to be a single target when you don't have the iconic ability with it, or I'm sorry, when you don't have the artifact with it, it turns into a single target. And what I mean by that is this. So let me actually go out of here and take this artifact off. So without the artifact, I pull one enemy, right? Without the artifact, it's clear. I pull one enemy. The more consistent I pull, the more he just gets pulled over with me. Um, but with the artifact, as you saw earlier, it pulls like 3. And I'm sure it's going to pull all of them as well at one point when I get higher and maybe it's 200. But you pull more with you, and you get to drag them along and string them along with you like a dog. You get to walk them like a dog for a while, and I love doing it personally. But that's pretty much those artifacts. Where am I? What was I doing? Oh yeah, okay. So I went over all the artifacts here, and then I went over this. All right. So now let's get into the nitty gritty of everything, the specs and allies. So for this build, the spec is pretty simple, and it's going to be the same or similar to my battle tank build. So just keep that in mind when I go through this to make this easier for you all. Um, Here's the meta genes. You have 2 dominating here, or 2 dominating here. Then you have 2 might, 2 resto. This setup for meta genes is and augments are optional. You don't need to do this. I just do it because I like to have a little bit of restoration, might, and dominance when it comes to this build, because this build isn't a serious kind of build. Like, I'm not taking this build into anything heavy. But to kind of get into the allies for this build, I have Crypto, which is as a combat, and he basically does his heat vision. Then I have Superboy as support ally 1, and getting your health changed 3 times grants a stack of might and precision buffs. So I have him as his first support ability for that. And then I have Professor Zoom. His first support ability being Hot Foot, increases movement speed while in combat. Pull abilities grants you bonus supercharge. So that's why I like this ability for Earth, the Magma Vortex, because not only am I getting supercharge from using it because it's a pull ability, but it also heals me as well. So it's kind of like a bonus. You get best of both worlds for a lot of things, you know. And then every single time I use a pull ability, I get healed for it. So I love it. Now for the stat points, I am spec super powered for this one. I have 10 in the critical power chance, 10 in critical healing, and 10 in 10 in critical power chance, 10 in critical healing chance, and 10 in critical attack chance. Now, I have the power ones because I'm actually testing something with this since Earth is so power hungry of a power. I want to put more into the critical power chance and mag to see if that changes the power aspect of of Earth when you have it spec. But not only these three having 10, I have also in the critical attack damage, I have 10, critical healing magnitude, I have 10, and then obviously critical power magnitude, I have 10. Um, and then again, for the restorative side of being a tank, I have my restoration being at 124, my might and power being 124, health being 126, and dominance being 124. Again, this is just a fun build, so my spec isn't really too serious, my spec isn't really too heavy, but this build does work. I've used it through a lot of things, and I used it for a lot of things because I didn't feel like being a battle tank. But you can use this build as a battle tank, but I wouldn't say it's a proper battle tank build like my other one, which I will get into after I go through my DPS one. But for my DPS one, my allies, Crypto, Superboy, and Professor Zoom. And I only have Professor Zoom as well because it does, like I said, for the supercharge and the Sunstone Dust iconic ability. Supercharge is a powerful supercharge, so I love it. And being able to have heals as a DPS, like that's kind of fun. I know a lot of people are like, well, you have a healer when you're running content and everything like that anyway, but this is for more or less like an open world thing, and I'm not trying to be a tank at the moment. I'm trying to just DPS it out. The heals actually come in handy, especially when it comes to elites and you're a DPS. Like if I'm a DPS and I'm running with a group and group members around me need healing, I pop this Beacon of Hope immediately. You know what I mean? Like I'll even pop it for myself just to have myself get heals. Like it is a clutch ability for DPSers uh, to have on, especially if we don't have a healer present in the raid or alert. Everyone definitely wants to get this ability. I love this ability. Um, Now, getting into my full tank allies, I have Crypto again. I can never go wrong with Crypto. For me, he's the best single target for me. I love him. Never getting rid of him. But for the support ones, are the main ones, I have the Flashpoint Batman. I have his first support ability, which is basically gain a certain percent of defense while not in group, and gain 1% of defense or however much when maxed defense while in a group. So this one's just basically a stack of defense while in and not being in a group. And then you have Cyborg, which is a boost your power regeneration when a base generator cell is above 50% in your base. So as long as your base generators are above 50%, this build's good, and I will show you that in a second. Um, if you don't know what that is, but I'm sure everybody knows what their base generator mods are, or their base generators are. But to get into the stats, I have hybrid stack or stat focus for this one because I do use brick. And then I have critical healing chance and mag at 10. Then I have 107 health, and then again, what I mean by full dominance, I have my dominance maxed out, which is another reason why, when it comes to specifying full tank or prec tank or resto tank, might tank, this is another thing on stating what they mean by it. Not only do they have the all purple Augs, but their dominance is maxed out for stats, which is another reason to kind of just throw that out there if you had that question. Um, for my battle tank, his allies are Superboy, and then I have Mr. Freeze because Mr. Freeze, I actually use his second support ability because using a supercharge summons a snow aura around you that damages enemies caught inside. So it's basically an AoE damager. So while you're fighting, you can sit here and pop this, and then say I pop the vacuum bubble supercharge ability, which I have in this loadout. It'll basically pop. So let me actually go over this loadout just in case I didn't, because now thinking about it, I don't think I did. But this loadout consists of Gemstone Shield, Heat Vision, Brick, Vacuum Bubble, Fortified Golem, Magma Vortex, Life Shield, Freezing Breath, Hope Wave, Surging Barrier, Beacon of Hope, and Jackhammer. So real quick, just to kind of go over this because I feel like I didn't. It's going to be Gemstone Shield, Breath, Break 5. Then the Heat Vision, then the Pull. Then you have the Light Shell Shield, Freezing Breath. Then you have Hope Wave, which is a Blue Lantern ability. Then Jackhammer, which a lot of people love. This is a fan favorite because when it comes to Earth Power, a lot of people love Jackhammer. I'm pretty sure everybody loves Jackhammer. Then you have my favorite Beacon of Hope. And then say if I wanted to pop the Vacuum Bubble, there's Mr. Freeze right there. So this aura around me, that siphoning around that vortex, that was from Mr. Freeze for me popping the Supercharge ability. So that's basically what that is. And I just did that just in case I didn't go over the loadout for this build. And if you did have that question on why isn't he going over the loadout or whatever the case may be, everything, will get talked about. Don't worry. Now where was I? Okay, right. For the stat points for this one. There we go. Superpowered. I am focus spec on superpowered because this one's more of a battle tank, so this one's going to be more of a might spec. Um, which is another way of saying I'm battle tank because you spec might, but you're in a tank role. So this one's again kind of like how I was saying earlier. When you're in tank role and you're trying to be a battle tank, you want to spec might more than you want to do dominance. To kind of throw that out there. But for the spec for this one is super powered, critical attack chance, critical attack damage, and then I have might and power at 370, and then for health I have it at 114 with a little bit of restoration. Because that little bit of restoration does go a long way. In my opinion, when it comes to Earth, because Earth is a power that doesn't have self-healing like fire or atomic does. But granted, now that we have the magma vortex, the beacon of hope, and the blue lantern abilities, or most of the blue lantern abilities themselves, it does come in handy. But again, it's still not like fires and atomics to where it's already embedded into the power. So just keep that in mind when it comes to the restoration. If you want a little bit of restoration for your tank, I would recommend putting a little bit of restoration in it. If not, perfectly fine. It's up to you. Um, and that's pretty much all of my current builds that I am presently using. Keep that in mind. These are builds that I presently use. Now I do have other builds as well that I use for other things or that I have used in the past, which are my old videos. So if you watch my old videos, you will see those builds. Can you still use those builds? I haven't personally used them in a while, but I'm sure you can still use them. You can still update them and mess around with them. Like for example, I have a restoration tank here. Now this tank is literally like a full-on restoration build. Um, this build I made a restoration build because Earth again, when it comes to the restoration by itself or without when it has its own self-healing, it's not like fires or atomics. And what I mean by that, for Earth power, the only thing that it has to heal itself is this ability here, Soothing Sands. But to kind of give you this build, if you want to make a restoration build, which a lot of people do use as of lately, which has changed a lot. This build is kind of like I use Mercy, Clarion, Red Tornado, Mystic, and Razor, and this is all for the healing. And then the allies I use for this one is Calculator Bot and Cyborg for the healing and power regen. And then here's the loadout: Gemstone Shield, the weapon buff, Brick Golem, Soothing Sands, and then this is called Mercy's Attack Protocol because I do have the Mercy artifact on, but it's Fortified Golem, Jackhammer, Magma Vortex, Beacon of Hope, Surging Barrier, Empowering Pulse, Hope Wave, and Life Shield. All abilities that basically give you a little bit of a restoration while using them or while in battle of any shape or form of PvE or PvP. That's pretty much that, and here's the spec for it, just in case. It's super powered, and then I have 10 in critical chance and magnitude, and then I have 170 restoration, 170 healing, 200 dominance. So this is basically just another optional build Um, if you would like to have a restorative tank, I personally don't use it anymore. Do I feel like bringing it back or planning on bringing it back? I would. Um, that's pretty much that. And I do have a few more builds that I'm actually working on as well. Or not working on, but I stopped using it after a while. Don't worry, I will do a base tour video so you can admire my base while I'm in it. But I do have that planned out. Don't worry. Oh wait, gotta wait for this. Come on. Because I know I do a lot of videos of my base and I never really showed out my base except for my old video. I know, yeah, I admire my base. I'll make a base video, I promise. I know I said it in the live stream. I said it. Now I will be making a full base tour video shortly, or pretty soon. So just stay tuned for that if you do want to see a full base tour video. And I mean not just my one base that I was just in, but all of them, including my league hall. But this build is a build that I made a while back. It's one of my old video builds. Um, this build I'm actually keeping because this build is a milestone for my channel. This build was actually the build I used to solo the Darkside War Factory raid with, and that was a milestone for me. Not only for just making a Superman character, but my channel in itself was a heavy milestone I wanted to heavily post. Um, the video is still out and it is on its own playlist, but that was a milestone, and this is the build I wanted to keep for it. Obviously, as like, hey, this is the build I used for it, you know. But to kind of run you down the video real fast, or not run you down the video, but run you down the build, so if you ever decide to use it, here's what it is. You have Mystic, Clarion, Red Tornado, Manacles, and Candle of Neurons as the artifacts. And then you have the stats points being Hybrid, 10 and 10 for critical healing chance mag, Restoration 50, Health 91, and then Dominance is in at 44. Now for the second loadout, we're gonna actually ignore the second loadout for this build because at the time of me soloing the Darkside War Factory raid, we actually didn't have the second loadout, and we're actually gonna ignore the last two artifacts here, if I remember correctly. Yeah, no, actually, I think we had five. No, no, we didn't. We didn't. We didn't have five artifacts during this time. But you can ignore these two. I forgot what artifacts I used during the Darkside War Factory solo. I know I used this one. I think I didn't use Medicals. I think I had Red Tornado. I had Clarion and Mythic. So three out of the five of these artifacts, you don't have to worry about two of them. But now that we have five artifacts, go ahead and use all five. You know, it's one of those things. I can't remember if it was I can't remember what three artifacts specifically after we got the five, but I know I sold it and we had three artifacts at the time and one loadout. And then after that, we ended up getting the extra two and then the second loadout. So for this build, again, you don't have to worry about the first loadout. But now that we have the second loadout, you can add whatever moves you want. I kind of just randomized mine. Do I feel like changing it or plan on changing it? I do. But this first loadout is the one I used. And then for the artifacts, since we have all five now, you can use them, but I'm pretty sure it was Mystic, Symbol, Clarion, and Candle, if I remember correctly, for the three that I had, because I knew I was using Candle. For the allies that I used, I was kind of alternating. I didn't have Mr. Freeze. I had Superman, and I had his Inspiring Breakout, which is a tank roll using a group breakout ability, gives you and all teammates a 25% damage reduction shield. So I used him, and throughout the fight, I was switching him and Crypto for combat, and it helped a lot. If you go watch the video, it is a 2 hour long video, I will say that now. Um, but if you want to go skip through the dark side or skip through the majority of it and get to the boss fights, so that's fine. So you can watch the first boss, second boss, and then obviously dark side, so you can see how I went through that. Go for it. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much this build. Um, The meta genes were might, all might, and then 2 dom. So that's pretty much that. I don't really have any other builds, and again, the build I just showed and the restoration build I just showed, those are all builds that I have made in old videos that I've posted, but you are welcome to use them. Again, I always say that when it comes to my Earth Tank builds, all of the old videos are still valid to use in current content. Like they will still get you through, they will still help you out, they will still give you that base to use for any new Earth Tank player or any person who is just trying to figure out a good solid build to start with to have that might actually stay with for a while. So those old videos are still relative to this day, um, including the ones that I have of recent content that we had. So Ranging Knight, again, my 2025 Earth Battle Tank video, and then my DCUO All Builds Renewed video. Those videos are still relative. Those videos still count because those videos builds are still current to what I currently use. These current builds that I'm using are just basically changed from those builds because of the new Blue Lantern and White Lantern abilities that we have. Um, So just keep that in mind. But that's pretty much all the video for all the builds, more or less the present day builds. But if you do have any other questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the comment section down below. And I hope you all enjoyed. Much love to you all. Bye, everyone.